Shardwalker, heed the whisper of the Hive. Hive Tarsid groans under an unseen terror, and Inspector Darus stands at the threshold of nightmares. In this tale of lurking dread and desperate courage, we invite you into the shadows of the underhive. And before we descend, ensure you have subscribed to our archive and struck the bell of notification so you do not miss what awaits in the darkness. Should you find this tale adequate, bless it with your like, so it may stand out in the algorithmic sea of binaries that shape this world. Know that your support of these chronicles is appreciated, not mandated. Should you wish to fortify our archives, you will find the link in the archives below, an offering to sustain our vigil. The choice remains yours, and yours alone. Now steel your soul, Shardwalker, for the descent is about to begin. Night in the depths of Hive Tarsid was a thick, palpable thing. Beneath flickering lum globes and the distant thunder of the manufactura far above, a lone figure hurried through a maze of rusted pipes and dripping archways. The air was stagnant, laced with the tang of promethium and decay. Every footfall splashed in unseen puddles of chemical runoff as Mara, a hab worker returning from the late shift, clutched her threadbare coat tighter. She tried to ignore the silence that pressed in between the distant clanging of machinery. Normally, the underhive was a cacophony of hab life. Clamoring voices, grinding machinery, the ever-present hum of ventilation fans. But tonight, her route home through District 17 was unnaturally quiet. Mara's instincts prickled. In the Imperium of Man, an unexpected silence often boded ill. A sudden skittering echoed somewhere to her left. Mara froze mid-step, heart thumping against her ribs. "Hello?" she called, voice trembling as it left her lips in a misty cloud. No response. Just the echo of her own voice dissipating into the tunnels. She fumbled out a small illuminator from her pocket, casting a feeble cone of light along the alley of corroded bulkheads and pipework. The beam danced over graffiti of obscure underhive gangs and faded imperial decals peeling off the walls. "The Emperor protects," one slogan read ironically, letters marred by grime. Something clattered behind her. Mara spun around, illuminator shaking in her grasp. "Who's there?" she demanded, attempting sternness. Only dripping water answered. Gathering her courage, Mara quickened her pace, boots splashing. She could see the faint glow of her hab unit at the end of the alley, a tiny sanctuary of light in the darkness, nearly home. She silently recited a fragment of the Imperial Creed for comfort. "The Emperor is my shield, the protector in darkness." A rasping chuckle drifted from the shadows. Mara's blood turned to ice. The sound was like a blade drawn over stone, impossibly close, yet coming from all directions at once. She opened her mouth to scream, but a swift blur descended. In the sputtering half-light, she caught a glimpse of a figure, tall and gaunt, with eyes that gleamed like hungry coals. Agony blossomed in her abdomen. Mara looked down to see claws, no, knives, protruding from her belly, slick with her blood. They withdrew and she crumpled to the ground, gasping. Her illuminator rolled from her hand. By its light, Mara saw the silhouette of her attacker looming over her. The figure was draped in ragged shadows, but she glimpsed pale, angular features and a twisted smile of sharpened teeth. In one spindly hand, it held a wicked blade that dripped red. Mara tried to speak, to beg or pray, but only a wet choke came out. The last thing she felt was cold fingers caressing her cheek almost tenderly, and a voice whispering in a language she did not understand. Silken, cruel words that carried the promise of suffering. The illuminator sputtered and died. In the darkness, Mara's weak gurgles were abruptly cut off. The chuckle echoed once more. Then there was nothing but the drip of water and the distant rumble of machines as Hive Tarsid's underbelly swallowed another secret. Inspector Anton Darus knelt by the puddle of blood, his jaw set in a hard line. The pooling crimson stood out starkly against the grime of the alley floor. Not a body to be found, just the sticky remains of a human life splattered across corroded metal. He ran a gloved finger along a streak of blood that arced up the wall, as if the victim had been dragged. A thin beam of morning light from the hive's distant upper levels barely cut through the underhive gloom. Darus clicked his tongue in frustration. Third one this month, he thought grimly. 3 missing persons, all vanishing under eerily similar circumstances. Scenes like this, violent struggle evident, but no corpses. The local enforcers had chalked them up as gang killings or mutant attacks at first, but Darus wasn't convinced. Even the most brutal underhive gangs usually left the bodies of their victims to send a message. This was something else. Behind him, Officer Keld shifted nervously, shotgun at the ready. Keld was young, fresh from academy, and despite his braggadocio in the precinct, the darkness of District 17 clearly unnerved him. "Sir, looks like a mess," Keld muttered, scanning the shadows as if expecting the walls to sprout teeth. "Sure it's not just scavvy gangers. They sometimes, eat the evidence." Darus stood, tugging his overcoat tighter around his shoulders. The air was clammy and cold this deep below the hive spires. "Scavvies usually leave bits behind," he replied, toying with a dented metal work badge bagged as evidence. The badge read Mara Tench, etched alongside the faded image of a tired middle-aged woman, the missing hab worker from the polyplast manufactorum. And scavvies don't take personal effects. Whoever did this took the victim herself and everything she had on her. Keld exhaled, his breath visible in the chill. "Throne. If it's 3 people gone missing now, maybe we should call in the Arbites, sir. This looks like it might be a cult. Could be heretics doing blood sacrifices." His voice dropped to a whisper on the last words, as if fearful of attracting malefic attention by speaking them aloud. Darus surveyed the scene again. There were no blasphemous symbols painted in blood, no profane runes or iconography one might expect from a chaos cult. Just violence and emptiness. "If it were a cult, I'd expect them to leave some sign of their devotions," Darus said, echoing his thoughts. "Cultists want others to see their work and spread fear." Still, the idea gnawed at him. In the Imperium, the line between a mundane crime and a matter for the Inquisition was perilously thin. But what cult simply stole away victims without a trace? He swept his hand lamp across the ground and spotted Mara's dropped illuminator, cracked and smeared with dirt. He picked it up gingerly. The casing was scored with what looked like claw marks. 4 parallel slashes, 2 even and sharp for a simple knife or any local animal. He showed it to Keld. "Seen a weapon that would do this?" Keld grimaced at the gouges. "Emperor's Mercy. That's not any knife, I know. Looks almost like claws." Darus felt a chill that wasn't from the cold. Claws indeed, but of what creature? No reports of sump beasts in this area, and mutants with claws large enough to rend plasteel were rare, and usually they'd leave a mangled corpse, not nothing at all. These marks were precise. He straightened up, resolve hardening. Whatever did this, it isn't a simple gang feud or mutant attack. We need to talk to our contacts in the underhive. Someone must have seen or heard something. Keld nodded, casting one last uneasy glance at the blood-splattered alley. "Should we report this up the line, sir?" Marshal Tiber might not like us poking around if it's unusual. Darus knew the Marshal, the head of Hive Tarsid's enforcers, would probably prefer to file these cases under unsolved rather than stir up panic. 3 missing underhivers hardly concerned the Hive's noble houses or the administratum, and resources were always tight. But Darus felt a personal pull. These were Emperor-fearing subjects of the Imperium, and something terrible was preying on them. He couldn't just walk away. "Let's keep details quiet for now," he said finally. "We'll report we're investigating suspected gang activity. No mention of claws or anything that'll send the adjutants into a frenzy." He gave Keld a pointed look. "Understood." "Understood, Inspector," Keld replied. He tried to sound confident, but Darus could hear the note of trepidation in the young man's voice. As they left the alley, Darus took one last look at the blood that soaked into the gutter. "I'll find who did this," he promised silently, Emperor willing. Unbeknownst to them, high above in the gloom of a maintenance duct, a pair of eyes watched their departure. Eyes that glinted with amused malice before vanishing into the darkness without a sound. The grub hole was a dim watering hole, nestled beneath a collapsed hab block, one of the few semi-safe gathering spots in the mid-underhive. Darus ducked under a low-hanging pipe as he and Keld entered, their boots crunching on decades of debris. The sour odor of cheap recaf, low smoke, and fried algae filled the air. A few off-shift laborers and hive scum loitered at tables, eyeing the enforcers warily. Darus wasn't here for them. In a back corner, perched on a makeshift stool, sat a skinny man in a stained flak jacket 2 sizes too big. He was hunched over a small glass jar, fishing something out of it. Snail. Darus knew him by no other name. A petty scavenger, an info broker, Snail had earned his nickname either for the enormous cargo servitors he once drove at a snail's pace, or for the trail of pickling brine he often left behind, given his constant snacking on anything pickled. As Darus and Keld approached, Snail looked up with a gap-toothed grin. "Well, if it ain't the lawman. Emperor's shiny boots, Inspector Darus in the flesh," he cackled, spreading his hands theatrically. "To what do I owe this honor? Come to finally take me up on that drink." He lifted the jar in salute. Inside floated pallid chunks of Emperor knew what, preserved in vinegar. Darus pulled out a rickety chair opposite the informant. On the table between them sat Snail's prized jar of pickled fungus stalks. The stench was eye-watering. Snail speared one with a rusty fork and popped it into his mouth, chewing happily. "Snail," Darus began quietly, leaning in. "I'm following up on those disappearances in District 17. 3 people gone. You hear anything that might enlighten me?" Snail's eyes flickered with interest and caution. "Disappearances, eh? Terrible business, that. Honest folk just vanishing." He tapped the side of the jar thoughtfully. "Rumors are flitting round like bloodflies. Some say a plague spectre got 'em. Others whisper it's one of them cults, snatching bodies for dark rites." Darus folded his arms. "And what do you say?" Snail shrugged, reaching into a pocket and producing a grimy low stick, which he parked behind his ear. "Me? I keep an open mind, friend. All I know is folks are scared. I've heard the stories. Shadows with claws, lights flickering out, people dragged off screaming." He leaned forward, lowering his voice dramatically. "Some even say they've seen a figure, a tall, pale wraith with eyes like hot coals." Keld, standing behind Darus, made a skeptical noise, but Darus did not dismiss the description so easily. It matched the uneasy feeling he'd gotten at Mara's crime scene. Anyone actually see this wraith and live to tell? Snail waggled a finger. "Ah, well, there's a hiver by name of Old Wren. Bit touched in the head, lives in the maintenance tunnels. Claims he saw his brother taken by a demon 2 weeks ago. Been raving about it to anyone who'll listen, which ain't many on account of his smell. Snail chuckled, a wet sound as he swallowed another pickled morsel. Darus knew of Ren, a former pipe worker who'd turned to drinking sacra after a chem leak accident. If he witnessed something, it might be muddled, but it was a lead. Where can I find him? Snail jerked a thumb southward. Last I heard, Ren squats in the old water processing substation off Canal Way. But Inspector... Snail paused, scratching at the stubble on his cheek, inadvertently smearing a bit of brine. People who gone looking for the missing, they sometimes don't come back either. There's talk something evil's nesting down there. He shivered theatrically. Even the gangers steer clear of certain tunnels at night. Keld muttered, "Superstitious lot," though Darus noticed his hand was tight on his shotgun grip. Darus reached into his coat and produced a small tin he had prepared earlier. He slid it across the table. Snail's eyes darted to it and grew wide. Lifting the lid, the informant let out a delighted wheeze. Inside were several fat-pickled amasec pear slices, a rare treat in the underhive, procured from an uphive merchant. "Courtesy of the Tarsid enforcers," Darus said dryly, "for your excellent memory." Snail beamed, revealing a greenish pickled slice clamped between his teeth. "Inspector, you're a gentleman and a scholar." He raised one of the pear slices in a mock toast. "May the God Emperor bless your kind soul." He devoured the slice with relish, then lowered his voice again. "One more thing I've heard. There's a corridor locals call the Black Walk, near substation 16B, supposedly where a lot of folks vanished. Word is, at the third shift bell you can hear wailing from the pipes there. Most won't go near it after dark." Darus filed that away. The Black Walk, likely a stretch of maintenance tunnel with a dark reputation. It might be exactly where the predator was hunting. He rose from the chair, straightening his coat. "Thank you, Snail. If your intel pans out, I'll see you get something extra." Darus glanced at the now half-empty pickle jar and the man practically hugging the tin of pear slices. "Try not to spend it all on delicacies." Snail chuckled, scooping up his precious payments. "Stay safe, Inspector. Hate to hear you went missing too. The underhive is a hungry place these days." For a fleeting moment, genuine concern flickered in Snail's eyes beneath the mirth. Despite his clownish demeanor, even he sensed something truly dangerous afoot. As Darus and Keld left the grub hole and stepped back into the dank alleys beyond, Keld exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath. "A pale wraith with burning eyes now, sir. Next he'll say it's the God Emperor's own shadow." Darus shook his head, deep in thought. Whatever it was, it had people too frightened to walk their own corridors. Fear like that could tear a community apart faster than any cult. Superstition often has a kernel of truth, Keld. We'll find old Ren and hear what he has to say. Sometimes the wildest tale points the way. Keld nodded, though his face betrayed doubt. "Yes, sir. Off to the Black Walk, then." Darus led the way, the weight of Snail's words pressing on his mind. As absurd as a pale wraith sounded, he recalled the claw marks on Mara's illuminator and the eerie silence of that alley. Sometimes the truth in the underhive wore the mask of superstition, and sometimes, he thought darkly, the superstition wasn't far off the mark at all. Old Ren proved easy to find but hard to talk to. Darus and Keld discovered him cowering in a maintenance alcove near the abandoned water substation, clutching a half-empty bottle of sacra. The wiry, grey-haired man flinched when Darus approached, eyes wide and bloodshot with terror, even before a word was spoken. It took gentle coaxing and a generous swig from Keld's flask to get him talking. Ren's story spilled out in fits and starts, punctuated by wild-eyed stares into the dark. "I saw it. By the throne, I swear it on holy terror," he insisted, voice quavering. "A demon? Or a Xeno? I don't know. It took my brother. Dragged poor Salen right into the shadows." Darus crouched to meet Ren's frantic gaze. "Easy, Ren. Tell us slowly. What did it look like?" Ren shuddered, rubbing a dirty hand through his unkempt hair. "Tall, taller than any man, thin like a corpse on stilts. Its eyes..." He swallowed. "Emperor preserve us. Its eyes glowed red, and it laughed." He let out a whimper, a chittering kind of laugh like it was enjoying our fear. Keld stood a pace back, one eye on the tunnels. "And it had claws? Or was it holding weapons?" Ren nodded feverishly. "Blades. It moved so fast I barely saw. We were just walking the Black Walk, me and Salen coming back from trading sump mushrooms. Then the lights flickered. Next thing, something fell on us from above. Had claws or swords that cut through Salen's coat like paper." Tears made tracks in the grime on Ren's face. "I ran. Throne forgive me, I ran when I heard it cutting him. I think it was cutting pieces off him while he screamed." He gagged, the memory too much. Darus placed a firm hand on the trembling man's shoulder. "Ren, focus. Did you see where it went? Did it carry Salen off? Was there a flash of light, a sound, anything?" Ren blinked rapidly, fighting through his trauma. "It dragged him around a corner. I heard a strange crackling, like lightning. By the time I dared peek, they were gone. Not a drop of blood left of my brother, just his work bag on the deck." He broke into quiet sobs. "Should have helped him. I shouldn't have run." Darus grimaced. The story confirmed his worst suspicions. This was no human killer. Glowing eyes, incredible speed, crackling energy that hinted at something few Imperial citizens would ever encounter. Warp spawn. A demon's eyes might glow, but they typically left madness, corruption. Ren, though distraught, didn't show the telltale gibbering of a warp-damned soul. His description reminded Darus of hushed tales from his PDF days, of Xeno-raiders who struck from nowhere. But those were far from here, weren't they? Leaving Ren with a few thrown gelt and instructions to stay hidden, Darus and Keld ventured deeper into the infamous Black Walk. It was a stretch of corridor long abandoned by maintenance crews, its lumen strips broken or flickering weakly. The nickname was well earned. Darkness clung here like a living thing. Darus checked his chronometer. Third shift bell was minutes away. The two officers advanced slowly, footsteps echoing. Apart from their breathing and the drip of water, all was silent. They reached a junction where several pipelines converged overhead. Darus recognized it from Ren's babbled directions. "This is where Salen was taken," he whispered, sweeping his lamp's beam over the deck plating. Deep scratches marred the metal, as if heavy, bladed equipment had been dragged along it. Keld knelt and pointed out a dark stain in a floor seam, blood long dried. Suddenly, a distant clatter rang out down the corridor. Both men snapped up their weapons. "You hear that, sir?" Keld hissed. Darus nodded, killing his lamp. Darkness enveloped them aside from a faint amber glow leaking from a cracked wall unit. They waited, straining to listen. For a long moment, only the thud of Darus's pulse in his ears marked time. Then, a scream, faint, feminine, and filled with raw terror. It reverberated through the pipes from somewhere around a bend to their right. Without hesitation, Darus drew his pistol and sprinted toward the sound, Keld close behind with shotgun raised. They barreled down a narrow service tunnel, the scream growing louder, more desperate. Abruptly it cut off, replaced by a low, cruel laugh that set Darus's teeth on edge. The same chittering laugh Wren had described. His blood ran cold. They burst into an open chamber, an old pump station lit only by a rotating emergency beacon, casting red light and shadow in dizzying succession. In that hellish strobe, Darus glimpsed a nightmare, a young woman pinned against a column, eyes wide with terror, struggling feebly against a dark figure that held her aloft by the throat. "Enforcers, let her go," Darus bellowed, leveling his pistol. Keld fanned to the side, finger on his shotgun's trigger. The attacker turned its head toward them. In the flashing red light, Darus saw it clearly for the first time, and his gut clenched. The creature was indeed tall and lithe, clad in baroque, spiked armor that glinted crimson in the beacon's glow. Its face was gaunt, almost elegant in an unearthly way, but twisted by a grin of wicked delight. Almond-shaped eyes smoldered a malevolent red, and from its rictus grin protruded elongated fangs. It looked like a depraved, nocturnal parody of an angel. "By the throne," Keld breathed, momentarily frozen by the sheer unreality of it. With a sneer, the Xeno tossed the woman aside like a broken doll. She hit the ground with a cry of pain. Before Darus could get a shot off, the alien moved. It darted to the side with inhuman speed, a blur of darkness and blood-red plates. "Stop!" Darus shouted, firing off 2 shots. The reports were deafening in the enclosed space. Keld recovered and unloaded a booming round from his shotgun. Pellets chewed into the metal wall as the creature somersaulted behind a cluster of pipes. A high-pitched, mocking voice echoed, speaking low Gothic with a strange, lilting accent. "Prey that fights back? How quaint." The sound seemed to slither from everywhere at once. Darus's skin crawled. It was toying with them. He signaled Keld, and they advanced cautiously toward the pipes, covering each other. The woman on the floor was whimpering, trying to crawl away. Without warning, a hail of razor-sharp discs spat out from the darkness. They sliced through the air with a sinister whir. One clanged off Darus's shoulder guard. Another sparked off a pipe near Keld's head. A third found flesh nicking Keld's cheek and drawing a line of blood. Keld cursed, wiping his face, and fired the shotgun into the tangle of pipes. "Show yourself, murderer," Darus barked, more to quell his own hammering heart than expecting compliance. A lilting laugh answered. From the high rafters above, the Xeno dropped down in a graceful arc, landing almost between them. Darus glimpsed it in the beacon's sweep, its armor adorned with barbed hooks and glistening in places with fresh blood. In its hand was a sword-like blade, thin as a razor. Darus spun and got a shot off at point-blank range. The bullet scored a spark across the creature's pauldron. With blinding speed, the alien lashed out. Darus felt a searing line of pain across his flank as the blade grazed him, slicing through coat and flak vest as if they were paper. The creature pivoted, smashing the back of its free hand into Keld. The blow, unnaturally strong, sent Keld reeling into a wall where he collapsed with a groan. Darus staggered back, clutching his side. The Xeno's burning eyes fell on him. It twirled its sword, preparing to finish the job. Darus gritted his teeth and fired again, but the alien was already moving. It lunged, kicking out. Armored boots struck Darus square in the chest. He flew back, crashing to the cement floor. His pistol slipped from his grasp, skittering into darkness. A second later, the creature was on him, straddling his chest. It seized his throat with one clawed hand, pinning him. Darus gagged, grabbing at the vice-like grip with both hands, but it was like trying to pry apart a steel trap. The Xeno raised its other hand high, the sword poised to impale. Darus stared up into that gleeful, alien face. This was how he would die, slain in a forgotten corner of the hive by some nightmare out of children's tales. Emperor, forgive me. I tried, he thought. A flash of sorrow for all those he'd failed to save. A thunderous boom reverberated through the chamber. The Xeno jerked violently, screeching. Its sword swung erratically, the tip slicing a shallow line of fire across Darus's throat instead of puncturing it. Darus gasped as the pressure on his neck released. The creature stumbled off of him, shrieking in pain and fury. Keld's shotgun roared again, muzzle flash illuminating his bloodied face contorted in determination. He had dragged himself up and fired 2 point-blank blasts into the Xeno's flank. Sickly dark blood splattered the floor. The alien hissed, one arm hanging limp where buckshot had shredded flesh and armor. Its malevolent gaze flickered between the two enforcers. For the first time, Darus saw something akin to uncertainty, even fear on its face. "Not so fast to die, are you?" Darus coughed, voice raw, forcing himself to his knees and reaching for a fallen stub revolver that had belonged to one of the long-dead substation workers. He leveled the weapon with both trembling hands. The creature bared its teeth at them and spat something in its own hissing language. Then, in a blur, it turned and sprinted into a side passage. After it. "We can't let it get away," Darus snarled, adrenaline overriding agony. He struggled to his feet and took off after the Xeno, Keld staggering in step behind him. They pounded down a rusted corridor, Darus's lamp swinging wild shadows. At an intersection, he caught sight of a dark, lithe shape up ahead, limping as it ran. He squeezed off 2 shots with the stub gun. The muzzle flashes briefly lit a narrow figure vaulting around a corner, but it was unclear if he hit it. By the time they reached that corner, the creature was gone. A maintenance hatch at the corridor's end hung open, swaying slightly. Beyond it lay a vertical shaft descending into blackness. Darus listened intently, but heard nothing but the echo of their own pursuit. The Xeno had vanished. Only silence remained in the tunnel now, broken by Keld's ragged breathing and the distant whir of ancient fans. Darus slammed a fist into the wall in frustration, wincing as the motion pulled at the wound in his side. It escaped, wounded but not dead. He cursed under his breath. A faint moan echoed from back in the pump chamber. "The woman!" Darus gasped, heart lurching. In the frenzy of the chase, he'd nearly forgotten her. They hurried back. The rotating beacon had burnt out, leaving only Darus's swaying lamp to light the scene of carnage. The young woman lay where she'd fallen. Darus knelt and gently turned her over. Her face was ashen, eyes half-lidded. A deep gash crossed her abdomen. The Xeno's blade had torn into her belly viciously. Keld knelt opposite, face drawn. Darus pressed a wad of cloth from his coat against the wound, trying to stanch the bleeding. The woman's eyes fluttered open at his touch. In them, he saw the raw terror of someone who had looked into the abyss. "You're safe now," he lied softly, forcing a reassuring tone. "We're here." She made a weak noise, somewhere between a sob and a cough. Blood flecked her lips. Darus leaned closer. "What happened? Did you see where it came from?" He had to know if she'd glimpsed anything that could help, but her eyes were glassy. "It came out of nowhere," she wheezed. "Grabbed me. It wanted to take me." A tear slid down her cheek. "It wasn't human. Emperor saved me. A devil." Her voice was barely a breath. "Hurts. So much." "I know," Darus whispered, throat tight. He had seen wounds like this on battlefields. They were almost always fatal. He kept pressure on the gash anyway, not willing to let her go. "Stay with me. Medici are coming." But her gaze had fixed on something beyond him. Perhaps something beyond this world. Her trembling hand gripped Darus's wrist suddenly. Don't. Let it take me, she pleaded, blood bubbling under the pressure bandage. Please. You're not going anywhere but home, Darus managed to say. But tears prickled in his eyes, because he could see the Emperor's peace coming over her face. A gentle sigh escaped her lips as her body went slack. The hand on Darus's wrist slipped away. She stared sightlessly at the ceiling, expression finally free of terror. Darus bowed his head, jaw clenched so hard it ached. Emperor, he prayed silently, receive this innocent soul. Behind him, the clatter of boots and shout of voices signaled the arrival of backup. The medici team and a half-dozen enforcers flooded into the pump chamber, their helmet lights cutting through the gloom. They were too late. Keld slowly rose, wiping blood from his cut cheek with a shaking hand. Blue-red strobes from the enforcer backup lights played over the scene. The lifeless victim, the spattered alien blood, Darus still kneeling beside the body. The young officer's expression was a mix of shock and anger. Emperor, damn that monster, he growled softly. Sir, we hit it. We made it bleed, so it can be hurt. Darus nodded numbly, lifting his hand from the woman's mortal wound. His gloves were slick with her blood, and the Xeno's dark ichor. It can, and it will be, he replied, voice low and cold. He pushed himself unsteadily to his feet, wincing as pain flared in his ribs and neck. Something crunched under his boot. Frowning, Darus knelt and picked up a small, razor-edged fragment of what looked like glass or crystal. It glinted violet in his lamplight. One of the star-shaped projectiles the alien had hurled shattered against the metal floor. Carefully, he collected 2 pieces into an evidence pouch. Each was about an inch long, unnaturally barbed and exuding a greasy sheen. His medici training told him the burning in his neck and side was likely from some toxin, perhaps coating these shards. As medics finally attended to the fallen woman, confirming what Darus already knew, he took a moment to survey the carnage under the harsh floodlights. The grey floor was pitted with blast marks and strewn with blood, bullets, and a few twisted shurikens embedded in walls. But of the Xeno, no sign except the inky blood trail it had left. Darus's hands tightened into fists. Some of the backup enforcers were crossing themselves or whispering prayers after seeing the scene. None of them had ever seen an alien up close, he reckoned. Few on a Hive world did, until one came for them. He exchanged a look with Keld. In that look, an unspoken pact was made. They had seen the predator's face, and they would hunt it down. No matter that it was not human, no matter that it was like nothing they'd faced. They could not abandon the people of Hive Tarsid to this pale wraith. Yet even as he steeled himself, Darus couldn't shake the memory of the creature's laughter echoing in the dark, or the way it vanished so swiftly. The hunter in the shadows was wounded now, yes, but far from gone, and he suspected it would only grow more dangerous now that it had been provoked. The Hive Tarsid Enforcer Precinct House was abuzz with uneasy whispers. News of the Black Walk incident had spread among the ranks. Rumors of a Xeno killer in the underhive, of a demon that wore shadows and stole souls. Inspector Darus sat on a bench in the infirmary, hissing, as a medici adept tightened a bandage around the gash on his flank. Nearby, Keld winced, while a junior medic stitched the cut along his cheek. Around them, enforcers came and went, trading murmurs and concerned glances. Marshal Tiber, a broad-shouldered man with iron-grey hair, strode into the room with a face like thunder. "Inspector Darus," he barked, his voice cutting through the low buzz of conversation. "What in the Emperor's name happened down there?" Before Darus could answer, Tiber's eyes fell on a body under a bloodied sheet on a nearby gurney. The young woman from the pump station, whom the medics had carried back. Tiber pulled the sheet back briefly, revealing the corpse's horrendous wound and pallid face. The marshal blanched. "Throne of terror," he muttered, covering her again. The shock in his face quickly hardened to a scowl. He stepped closer to Darus and lowered his voice. "I've heard wild reports, but I want it from you straight. What are we dealing with?" Darus rose to his feet, ignoring the flare of pain from his bandaged side. He stood at attention out of habit. "Sir, we encountered the perpetrator. It's not human. Some kind of Xenos raider. Fast, cunning, armed with advanced weaponry. It killed the civilian, wounded us, and escaped." His tone was clipped, professional, but inside he felt the emotional weight of that failure. Tiber searched Darus's face for any sign of exaggeration or madness. Finding none, he gave a curt nod. Keld added hoarsely, "I saw it too, Marshal. Pale as a corpse, red eyes, spoke our language even. It toyed with us." He glanced down, shame on his face. "If Inspector Darus hadn't been there, I'd be dead." Tiber blew out a breath and ran a hand over his close-cropped hair. Of all the crises a precinct could face, a Xenos incursion was beyond expectation. "Throne," he swore under his breath. "All right, I'll send an astropathic memo to Sector Command. Emperor willing, the Ordo Xenos or a Death Watch kill team will respond." He fixed Darus with a hard stare. "But they might not get here for days. What do you think this thing is, Inspector? Have you seen its like?" Darus glanced around. A couple of enforcers nearby pretended not to listen. He stepped closer to Tiber. "I have a guess, sir. From the old TAC-Logis briefs. It might be an Eldar. A Dark Eldar." The name felt strange and ominous on his tongue. At that, a robed figure glided into the infirmary, saving Tiber from having to respond immediately. Magos Zeren, the precinct's attached Adeptus Mechanicus tech priest, approached with measured, mechanical steps. His red robes trailed slightly, and a rebreather mask obscured the lower half of his face. In his bionic hands, he carried a small tray. "Inspector," Zeren intoned in his flat, binary-tinged voice, "I have concluded the preliminary analysis of the evidence you provided." Darus had handed over the crystalline shards and a vial of the Xeno's spilled blood to the Magos upon arriving back at Precinct. All eyes turned to the tech priest. Marshal Tiber gestured curtly. "Let's hear it." Magos Zeren set the tray on a steel side table. Upon it sat the jagged fragments Darus had collected, now cleaned and neatly arrayed. In the harsh lumen globe light, the shards glittered with a faint purple sheen. "This material is not of any Imperial manufacture," Zeren stated matter-of-factly. "It is a lattice of metastasized crystal impregnated with exotic elements. Additionally, trace compounds on the surface constitute a complex neurotoxin, unlike any in the Mechanicus pharmacopoeia." He lifted one shard delicately between metal fingers. "Such design and substance are consistent with Xeno's weaponry, specifically Eldari pattern splinter weapons, often employed by the kindred colloquially termed Dark Eldar." A murmur went through the few enforcers within earshot. Darus felt a chill despite expecting this. During his PDF service years ago, he'd overheard fragments of conversations about Eldar raiders, elusive aliens striking isolated colonies or void ships. He'd never imagined encountering them on a hive world. Marshal Tiber's eyes narrowed. Dark Eldar, Emperor's mercy. He took a moment, digesting the revelation. "What else, Magos?" Zeren set the shard down and picked up a data slate. "The black blood sample displays unusual properties, rapid coagulation, and presence of potent stimulants, likely combat drugs. This aligns with known Drukhari, Dark Eldar, combat practices. They commonly enhance themselves with elixirs to heighten aggression and pain tolerance. Darus remembered the creature's astonishing speed and resilience. It all fit. He cleared his throat. Magos. Weaknesses. How do we kill it? Zeren cocked his head, the red optics on his mask whirring. They remain flesh and blood. Conventional ballistic or laser weaponry can be lethal if you can hit the target. Their armor is advanced, yet lighter than ceramite. It can be penetrated by focused fire. The primary challenge is their superlative reflexes and stealth. They prefer shock and surprise. Auspex scans might detect them if tuned properly, though they possess devices to dampen such emissions. Tiber grunted. So, not invincible. That's good. He turned to Darus, expression grave. You and your man drove it off, and that's no small feat. But if there is one, there could be more. Darus had already considered that. Snail's intel and the pattern of disappearances suggested a prolonged operation, not a lone predator. Sir, with respect, if it is Dark Elder, they operate in small groups, raiding parties. Their modus operandi is to strike swiftly and take captives before a defense can be mustered. Slaves, sir, the missing people. He trailed off, letting the implication hang. Those victims weren't just murdered. They were likely alive somewhere, suffering fates worse than death. The marshal's face hardened. I'm aware, Inspector. He rubbed his temples. Emperor, damn it. A Xeno slaver pack under our noses. He straightened, resolve overcoming shock. All right. Every hour counts. I'm not waiting for off-world help. We handle this, here and now, with what we have. He pointed to Darus and Keld. I'm assigning you two to lead a sweep of the Black Walk and surrounding sectors. I'll pull a fire team of our best for you. Gear up with whatever you need. Shock grenades, flamers, you name it. We'll flood those tunnels with light and fire. Flush these bastards out. Magos Zeren interjected softly. If I might suggest, should they be employing a webway portal to enter and exit? Essentially, a hidden doorway through dimensions. It could be anchored somewhere in that area. If found, disrupting or destroying it would cut off their egress and reinforcements. Darus nodded, recalling Wren's mention of crackling air and how the fiends vanished. A hidden portal made terrible sense. We'll look for anything not of local origin. Likely some kind of alien device. Tiber clapped Darus on the shoulder. Take whatever you need from the armory. I'll have a squad meet you at checkpoint Theta 4 in an hour. And Darus, the marshal's gruff voice softened just a hair. Bring our people home if you can. Darus met his eyes. Yes, sir. He intended to do nothing less or die trying. An hour later, Darus stood in the precinct armory's staging bay, strapping on a carapace vest over his reinforced flak jacket. The vest was a military-issue piece normally reserved for Arbites or PDF riot troops. It would at least give him a fighting chance against those splinter rounds. He holstered a freshly inspected auto pistol at his hip and slung a combat shotgun over his shoulder for good measure. Keld sat on a nearby bench, loading shells methodically into his shotgun's tubular magazine. His face was bruised and stitched, but his hands were steady. The young officer had a flame in his eyes now. Vengeance had burned away his earlier fear. At the bay door, a hesitant figure hovered. Snail. The informant wrung his cap in his hands, shifting from foot to foot. His usual cheeky grin was nowhere to be seen. Inspector, Snail called softly. Darus looked up, surprised but not displeased. Snail, this area's off limits just now. Snail stepped forward anyway, glancing at Keld, then back to Darus. I heard some of the boys talking. You really stirred up a Xeno down there. His voice was unusually subdued. Darus tightened the strap on his forearm guard. We did. Dark Eldar. Ever heard of them? Snail paled visibly. Stories only, he gulped. Piratical devils snatching folks out of nowhere, worse than any slaver. I always thought it was just voidfarer tales. He licked his lips, then reached into the deep pocket of his jacket. Look, I know I ain't exactly a loyal servant of the throne, but I don't fancy human folk getting dragged off by freaks. He pulled out a small jar, one Darus recognized. It was Snail's personal stash of pickled grox eggs, a rare treat he often boasted about scoring. Snail thrust it forward awkwardly. I was saving these, but maybe you need 'em more, yeah? Eat one before the fight. For luck. It was a clumsy gesture, but the earnestness in Snail's voice was real. A faint smile tugged at Darus's lips. In this grim business, such human moments were few. He accepted the jar gently. Thank you, Snail. We'll put them to good use. He set it aside carefully. Snail managed a weak chuckle. Emperor's truth, Inspector. You're a braver man than me. I ain't going near that darkness for all the thrones on Terra. His grin fluttered back, just a little. Then his face fell somber again. Just come back all right. Hive Tarsid needs folks like you. Not waiting for a response, he bobbed his head to Keld and scurried out, leaving the bay eerily quiet. Darus donned his helmet and sealed it, the autosensors humming to life. He glanced at Keld. Ready? Keld pumped the slide of his shotgun. Ready, sir. They met their reinforcements at checkpoint Theta 4, a bulkhead gate leading into the abandoned maintenance zones. 4 enforcers awaited them, hand-picked by Tiber. Each wore full riot armor and carried a mix of auto rifles and shotguns. Darus knew them by reputation. Hard men who had put down Hive gang uprisings and mutant infestations without flinching. Still, as Darus gave a final briefing under the harsh glow of portable lumen lamps, he saw the unease in their eyes. It wasn't every day they were ordered to hunt Xenos in pitch-black tunnels. You all know what we're up against, Darus said, voice steady. A small pack of Dark Eldar, sadistic alien slavers. They are faster than you, stronger than you, and they will use every trick to terrorize and confuse, but they can be wounded. They can die. Trust in your training and in each other. The enforcers stood a little straighter. One thumbed the Aquila pendant around his neck and muttered, "The Emperor's shields." Darus nodded firmly. We make for the Black Walk and spread out. Magos Zeren provided an Auspex tuned to pick up any unusual energy fields, likely their portal. We find that portal device and any hostiles, and we destroy them. He held up a small remote detonator. I've got 4 charges of Hab floater explosives placed at choke points en route. If we flush them, and they try to bolt deeper, we'll seal the exits. The squad acknowledged in grim silence. Darus pulled back the slide of his autopistol, chambering around. Emperor be with us. With that, they entered the tunnels once more. A line of 6 armored figures swallowed by the darkness. Their helmet lamps lanced ahead, and a palpable tension rolled off the squad. The quiet before a storm. Darus took point, Auspex in one hand, shotgun in the other. Keld watched the rear. They moved with slow, methodical steps. Every drip of water and clank of distant metal set nerves on edge. The further in they went, the more Darus felt a prickling on his skin. Whether it was instinct or some emanation of the Xenos device, he couldn't tell. At last, the Auspex began a rapid beeping. A spike registered on the display not far ahead. Darus silently signaled for the squad to halt, then motioned for 2 enforcers to peel off and circle from the left while he and Keld flanked right. They crept forward into a wide junction chamber. Past the corridors he last saw the enemy during their first encounter, and there at the far end of the chamber, flickering fitfully, was a shimmering oval of sickly green luminescence about the height of a man. The webway portal. Darus's breath caught. In the rippling void of that portal, he thought he glimpsed alien spires against a pitch-black sky. The sight was fleeting and uncertain, but the Auspec's squeal left no doubt. Closer by, a few meters from the portal, Darus's light fell upon a heartbreaking sight. 4 huddled figures, chained together at the wrists, sitting on the floor. They were captive humans. 2 men and 2 women, all filthy, bruised and terrified. Likely some of the missing. One man looked up, hope and confusion in his eyes as he saw the armed enforcers. His mouth moved behind a gag. Darus's stomach turned hot with anger. He held up a closed fist to keep his team back. It was too quiet. The Xenos wouldn't leave their slaves unguarded. This reeked of a trap. As if on cue, a voice purred from the darkness above, dripping with malice.
Welcome, little monkey. Come to trade yourselves for these morsels.
Darus snapped his shotgun up toward the rafters, as multiple shapes detached from the gloom. How could he not have seen them? They had been lurking above doorways, behind debris cloaked by some damnably effective camouflage, until they chose to reveal themselves. The squad reacted with commendable speed for being ambushed. "Contact front multiple," an enforcer shouted. Gunfire erupted, muzzle flashes strobing. 3, 4, at least 5 distinct Xenos forms flitted through the periphery of the enforcer's lights. Lances of neon blue splinter fire rained down from the pipes. Thin crystalline projectiles whistled through the air. One enforcer screamed and went down as several shards punched through his armor. He convulsed on the floor, the potent toxins working swiftly. Another officer spun and collapsed, blood spurting from his neck, felled by a barely seen assailant wielding a bladed whip. Darus fired into the movement, catching a glimpse of a familiar figure vaulting between pillars with acrobatic grace. His shot missed as she flipped away, laughing. Meanwhile, a towering figure in heavy armor bounded into their midst with a growl. His ancient-looking war mask and flowing tassels made him look like death incarnate. With one swing of his 2-handed glaive, he cleaved through an enforcer's torso, the man's body hitting the ground in 2 gruesome pieces. "Fall back! Circle up!" Darus shouted over the cacophony. The 4 remaining enforcers, Darus, Keld, and 2 others, tightened formation near a stack of crates, trying to cover every angle. The Xenos were all around, quicksilver shapes in the dark. Keld blasted at a shadow darting on their flank. One of the Kabbalite riflemen shrieked and fell from an overhead pipe, armor peppered with shot. A small victory, short-lived. A hail of splinters from another angle punched into the chest of the officer beside Keld. The man gasped and crumpled, his breastplate riddled with quills. 3 of them left. Darus's mind raced even as he pumped his shotgun and loosed both barrels at the heavily armored Xeno charging again. The slug impact staggered the armored brute, buying a second of breathing room. In that second, Darus made a decision. He reached to his belt and grabbed a flashbang grenade. With a quick yank, he armed it and yelled, "Flash out! Cover your eyes!" The team obeyed on instinct, snapping their eyes shut behind visors. A split second later, a blinding flash filled the chamber as the grenade went off. The entire room washed white with searing light. The Dark Eldar cried out in anger and pain as the sudden brilliance pierced their enhanced vision. Darus recovered first, blinking away spots. "Now take them!" he roared. He and Keld surged forward from cover, joined by the last uninjured enforcer. Keld drew a bead on the brute, who was reeling and clutching at the eye slits of his helmet. The boom of Keld's shotgun was followed by the mighty alien's roar. The enemy fell to one knee, dark blood weeping from cracks in his war armor. The remaining enforcer sprayed autogun fire at the sniper on the gantry, catching the Cabalite in a withering burst that sent him toppling lifelessly to the floor. Darus pumped his own shotgun and rushed toward the portal, where a tall silhouette of what he assumed to be their leader was visible, disoriented by the flash, but still standing near the captives. If they could take out the leader and secure the prisoners now. His hopes died as quickly as they'd flared. With a feral scream, the lithe Xeno, with the bladed flail, launched herself into their path. Her eyes were slitted in pain from the flash, half her face splattered with blood, but her snarl was pure fury. She whirled her razor-edged flail at the enforcer to Darus's left. The barbed whip coiled around the man's torso faster than he could react. She yanked with a sadistic grunt. Blades sliced through armor and flesh. The enforcer was literally torn apart, a spray of blood announcing his grisly end. Keld emptied his shotgun at her, forcing her to spring aside or be blown in half. She was unnaturally fast. Only one pellet clipped her calf, but even that made her hiss in pain. A loud crack and an incandescent bolt of energy answered. Their leader had recovered. He leveled a peculiar pistol at Darus and fired a sphere of crackling darkness. Darus dove behind a column as the dark light bolt impacted where he'd stood, exploding in a halo of black energy that left the metal support sizzling and partially gone. Even in cover, Darus felt the hairs on his neck rise from the static discharge. A cold alien voice echoed, imperious despite the chaos, giving some order in a foreign tongue. Blinking sweat from his eyes, Darus peeked out and saw the scene tipping toward doom. The brute, wounded but not dead, was rising again with murderous intent. The lithe one limped but stalked forward, bloodlust in her gaze. And behind them, their leader himself advanced with measured confidence, an elegant saber now drawn in one hand, while his pistol smoked in the other. Keld, undaunted, had loaded his last shotgun shell. With a yell of defiance, he charged the leader head-on, combat knife drawn in his offhand. Perhaps he hoped the sudden move would catch him off guard. It did not. With almost casual ease, he sidestepped Keld's slash. The alien lord's saber flickered out. Keld halted abruptly, a strange choking sound coming from him. Darus watched in horror as Keld's knife and shotgun tumbled from his grip, along with his severed forearm. The blade had sliced through his limb and into his torso in one merciless cut. Keld crumpled to the ground at the Xeno's feet, gasping as blood pooled. His eyes found Darus one last time, and in them Darus saw apology and peace. Then Keld lay still, another life extinguished in the dark. Darus roared in fury and despair. He popped out of cover and fired his shotgun at the alien leader's exposed side. One shell left. It caught him across the shoulder. The alien lord snarled as he staggered, his ornate pauldron dented and scorched. Immediately, Darus racked his shotgun to eject the spent shell and heard the hollow click. Empty. The leader recovered, turning slowly toward Darus. Darus dropped the useless shotgun and drew his service pistol with numb fingers. A shape blurred at his periphery. The remaining Cabalite gunner, repositioned, was firing. A splinter round grazed Darus's thigh, punching through armor. He cried out as hot pain lanced up his leg, venom already burning in the wound. His knee buckled, and he half collapsed behind the column, pistol still in hand. The lithe female was circling too, twirling her gore-stained flail eagerly. Darus realized they weren't rushing to kill him. They were surrounding him like hunters, cornering a beast, drawing out these final moments.
Such spirit,
the leader said, voice resonant and pitiless. He removed his horned helm, revealing a face of haunting, cold beauty, all sharp cheekbones and milky white skin. his black eyes fixed on Darus as one might regard a prize stallion.
You've cost me time and blood, human. It's only fair I repay the favor in kind.
He nodded to the female. Before Darus could blink, her whip snapped out and coiled around his pistol, tearing it from his grasp. With a sharp tug, she sent the weapon clattering away into darkness. Darus tried to push himself up to fight barehanded if need be, but the wound in his leg, laced with poison, refused to bear weight. He collapsed back against the column, chest heaving. The leader closed the distance, stepping over Keld's corpse without a glance. Darus fumbled at his belt. His fingers brushed one last grenade, a fragmentation bomb. He gritted his teeth, steeling for a final act. If he could not live, he would make sure these fiends remembered him. His fingertips found the detonator stud. In a flash of motion, the alien lord's boot pinned Darus's forearm to the ground, preventing him from activating anything. The Xeno purred, leaning down. Up close, Darus could smell a faint mix of perfume and blood on him.
None of that. I have plans for you.
He smoothly slid a thin, barbed dagger from his waist and plunged it through Darus's forearm, nailing it, and the hand clutching the grenade to the floor. Darus screamed as agony lanced up his arm. The grenade rolled free from his spasming fingers, fortunately without triggering. The female kicked it away and let out a breathy laugh.
Oh, I like this one, spirit.
She cooed, face flushed either with pain from her wound or excitement.
Can I have him after you're done, my lord? Just for a little playtime?
The leader ignored her, crouching to meet Darus's gaze. Darus trembled with pain and rage, but met those midnight eyes without flinching. If looks could kill, this Xeno would have fallen dead, but they could not.
Listen well, worm,
he said softly, almost kindly, as if sharing a secret.
Your lives were over the moment we laid eyes on this hive. Everything since has been a courtesy. You should thank me. Few of your kind ever see the wonders I'm about to show you.
He tilted his head, examining Darus almost gently.
I smell defiance on you. Good. The defiant ones last so much longer.
He nodded to his subordinates.
Take him, and gather the rest. Time to depart. Our welcome is worn thin here.
Rough, spiked hands hoisted Darus by his shoulders. The dagger was yanked from his arm, and he howled, struggling even now. The Kabbalite warriors seized him, though one paused to viciously rifle-butt Darus in the stomach, expelling the last of his fight in a choked gasp. Through watering eyes, Darus saw the surviving Drukhari hurriedly shepherding the chained human captives and their wounded brethren toward the flickering portal. The brute, grievously hurt, limped along, supported by a lesser warrior. The female dragged one of the captives by the hair, her expression sour at being denied Darus's fate for now. The leader approached the portal last, overseeing the withdrawal. The two soldiers gripping Darus half dragged, half carried him forward. He could barely feel his legs. The toxin from the splinter wound had deadened them. His vision blurred with tears of rage and pain, but he forced himself to memorize every detail of the moment. The exact timbre of the leader's voice, the female's spiteful glance back at him, the stench of blood and ozone. He wanted to remember, because memory was all he had left to fight with. They stood before the green-lit oval of the webway gate. Up close, it filled Darus with primal dread. It was as if reality itself had been peeled open, exposing a howling abyss. Through that swirling doorway, he glimpsed alien spires and walkways suspended in a void. The air from within reeked of carrion sweetness and despair. Darus mustered his remaining strength and spat a mouthful of blood at the Xenolord's feet. "The Emperor will judge you," he rasped. The leader responded with a smile that was almost paternal.
"Your Emperor cannot hear you where we're going."
With that, he shoved Darus through the portal. Icy blackness enveloped him. For a moment, Darus felt like he was tumbling through a freezing void. He might have blacked out for a second or an hour. There was no sense of time or direction. When sensation returned, he lay on hard, obsidian ground under a dark and colorless sky. A thin, acrid air filled his burning lungs. Darus groaned, rolling onto his back. Above him loomed impossibly tall structures, jagged spires and arches flung between them. Green witchlights bobbed in the air, casting sickly illumination on architecture that defied sense. Screams. Faint, distant, countless screams, echoing from all directions. Darus's blood ran cold. He didn't know where he was, but he knew this place was nightmare manifest. A hell carved from the corpse of a god, if the legends were true. Dimly, he saw the portal behind him, a shimmering oval freestanding in the air, and watched as the last Drukhari stepped through, towing their prizes. The gate collapsed with a soft whoosh, stranding them all in this nightmare realm. Around him, the captives from Tarsid whimpered in terror. One began to sob uncontrollably. The Drukhari conversed in their melodic, venomous language, and a few barked laughs at the humans' distress. Darus tried to sit up, and immediately cried out as liquid fire shot through his pinned arm and leg. The Kabbalite guards flanking him yanked him upright, dragging him before the leader like a beaten dog. The alien lord surveyed his hall. 2 more Drukhari arrived, one bearing a set of cruel manacles, the other a wicked-looking syringe. Efficiently, they began restraining the new captives and injecting them with something. Tranquilizer, or maybe a paralytic. The human prisoners recoiled and struggled weakly as needles bit flesh. Darus could only watch in exhausted horror. Though his vision swam, he refused to scream or beg. He refused to give them the satisfaction. He locked eyes on the leader, trying to burn with hatred. He noticed, approached Darus, and placed a deceptively gentle hand on the inspector's cheek, turning his face side to side as if examining livestock.
"This one might provide sport for weeks,"
he mused to the female, who leaned nearby, wiping her blade clean.
"Remarkable endurance."
She smirked, though pain etched her features from her wounded leg.
I look forward to hearing him break. I want to savor it.
The leader nodded.
"Oh, you shall."
He then leaned in to Darus.
"I keep my promises, human. Your new life begins now."
Darus finally felt the first tendril of real fear slither up his spine. Yet he mustered a final act of defiance. He bared his teeth and snarled, "Throne, damn you, filth!" The response was a brief, amused chuckle. He snapped his fingers, and a guard jabbed something into Darus's neck. Searing cold spread from the injection site. Darus's limbs turned leaden. His tongue felt too large for his mouth. He was conscious, but utterly helpless, eyes darting in panic. They dragged him deeper into the nightmare city. As Darus was pulled past looming towers of alien design, beneath dangling cages from which emaciated figures moaned, he felt hope gutter out in his heart. Hive Tarsid, his home, was impossibly distant. Another world, another life. No help would come. The God Emperor's light did not reach here. He and the others were now nothing more than sustenance for monsters. Tears of rage and despair brimmed in Darus's eyes, but he refused to let them fall. Even as he was escorted into a baroque doorway of black iron, even as he heard the clamor of 100 victims echoing from within, He clung to one thought to keep madness at bay. They will never break who I am. They will never make me beg. But in the end, his resolve, like his body, was only human. When the heavy doors slammed shut behind them, sealing out the distant screams only to replace them with nearer ones, Inspector Anton Darus of Hive Tarsid finally knew what it was to feel truly alone. His silent tears did fall then, unseen in the darkness. Hive Tarsid would never know the true fate of its missing. In the weeks that followed, Marshal Tiber filed an official report framing the events in the underhive as a tragic industrial accident, a ruptured promethium line, and subsequent explosion. That was the story given to account for the loss of Inspector Darus, Officer Keld, and others who had vanished or died. The records showed the case as closed, the threat eliminated. Publicly, life in the hive ground on as it always did, billions of souls toiling beneath the distant light of the God Emperor, blissfully ignorant of the horror that had brushed past them in the dark. Down in the underhive, a few whispered the truth in secret. They spoke of pale devils that came from the shadows, of brave enforcers who fought and vanished. But such tales were dismissed by the authorities as sump-born superstition or the ravings of chem-addled minds. The official narrative held sway, the powerful ensured it, and so the ordinary people of Hive Tarsid carried on, never realizing how thin the veil of their safety had been, how a ravenous darkness had reached into their world and plucked away lives without anyone wiser. Perhaps it was a mercy that they did not know. Ignorance can be its own shield in the grim darkness of the far future. Far away, in a nightmare city beyond real space, the true ending unfolded in torment and screams. There, in the lightless depths of Komara, Anton Darus and the others, taken from Tarsid, learned of pain beyond mortal limits. Their new masters, the Dark Elder, reveled in their suffering, drawing it out for days, weeks, or eternity. Time held little meaning in that hellish place. In shadowy galleries adorned with instruments of torture, the screams of Hive Tarsid's lost people rose and fell, echoing along with countless others in an endless cacophony of agony. Only few, the knowledgeable, understand what truly transpired in Hive Tarsid's forgotten depths and bear witness to the nightmare that its citizens never could. Fewer yet know that a small band of ordinary heroes fought something unimaginable and how that fight ended. In the end, Inspector Darus and his comrades fell in darkness, their sacrifice unsung by their own people. In a universe as cruel as this one, even a valiant heart and an iron will were not always enough to triumph. The shadows simply gathered them up, leaving the world none the wiser. Perhaps that ignorance is the last gift to the people of Tarsid, a kindness amid the cruelty. For if the Hive's billions truly understood what horrors lurked beyond their sight, if they knew how close true evil had come, their nights would never be free of fear. The tale of Hive Tarsid's unseen nightmare comes to a close here, in uneasy silence. The darkness remains, as it always does, and somewhere beyond the veil of reality, the screams of the lost still echo, unheard and unanswered. Thus ends the harvest of shadows. You have emerged from the depths of Hive Tarsid, Shard Walker, though the darkness clings to your soul. If this story has stirred your spirit, let it be known with a like, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement feeds the archival spirit. If you've not yet joined our ranks, subscribe and strike the bell of notification so that you are ready when the next grim tale emerges from the void. Know your support is appreciated, never mandated. Those who wish to bolster our journey will find the proper link kept in the archives below. We thank you for walking these shards of night with us. Until next time, stay vigilant in the dark. The Emperor protects, even in the blackest of shadows.